Hi everybody and welcome to my studio. My name is Lonna and I am an acrylic artist. Thank you for stopping by my studio today. We're going to be painting something that I hope is a very peaceful type of painting for you. I really enjoyed this one. I've titled it Quiet Time, so let's take a look at it. Isn't this just so peaceful looking? This is your quiet time in the morning, whether you're writing in your journal or reading a devotional book. This is the quiet time that I think of in the morning. So I hope that emotes that kind of feeling for you. It's going to be a lot of fun to paint. I think you're going to learn a lot in this one, and I am excited to paint this with you. I will be using Deco Art Americana acrylic paints. So if you guys are ready to paint this, let's grab our paints and supplies and let's get painting. Okay, we're going to start on this project. I have an 8x10 wood panel here, and I have prepared it with multi-purpose sealer using a damp 2-inch foam roller, and then applied 2 coats of lamp black. Deco Art Americana paints is what we'll be using on this project. I've let it dry. I've measured up 3 1/4 inches for a table line. This is just going to give us an idea of where we're going to put some different colors in the background. So I'm going to grab some deep burgundy and put that on my palette, as well as some burnt umber, kind of a brown color down here, I think is what I want. I'm going to get some of my black out, and I think I'll put a little bit of white or warm white out as well. I don't need near as much paint as what I'm putting on my palette right here. My canvas is not that big, and it really doesn't take very much paint to work on this project. Let me get some white or some warm white out. I'll put some warm white out. And of course I will spritz my palette with water in case I need some water as I'm working on my background here. I can just grab some real quick right here and not have to go over to my water basin to get my paint. Alright, I've got a filbert brush. This is a 3/4 inch filbert brush here. I'm going to thin down a little bit of black paint, and I'm going to just loosely apply this into my background back here, just through the center. I can blend it out as I, add more black on the outside edges if I need to. So I've just wiped everything out of my brush, and I'm going to grab some of this deep burgundy, a little drop of water, and maybe that's too much water, and I want to start creating this kind of red color in the center of my black here, and I definitely have way more water than I need, so more paint, and put this through the middle, go all the way down to that line, bring it out just a little bit more black so we can blend this all together. Maybe bring it out a little bit more, not keep it quite so controlled there in the center. Okay, go back into my black and come over here to the edges, and then just kind of slap blend that. I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm going to grab just a little bit more burgundy in here. Wipe off and just kind of tickle it and feather it out into these outer edges a little bit. You can just see a hint of burgundy in there. I'm going to add a little bit more so that you guys can see it a lot better. It's blending with that a little bit of wet black that we put in there, but I've put a couple of layers on now, probably 3, possibly 4, to get it a nice color that you can see. Now I'm just going to barely tip into some white here, that warm white, and create a little bit of a lighter area in the center back here. And again, you still cannot see that, so I will lighten it up a little bit more. There we go. Now you should be able to see it. Wipe my brush off and get as much of that lighter color out of there as possible. Grab a little bit more of the red, and it looks like I picked up some black as well. And I just want to very gently tickle blend, which means I'm just using the tips of the bristles right here. And very gently tickle, 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 blend, blend, blend. Create this beautiful background back here. Anytime you feel like you need to come back in with some black, which I feel like it needs just a scooch of black in there. It's too much solid red. I want a little bit of that black to scoot through there. Now I'm pretty much running out of paint and moisture on my brush, so I'm just going to blend this out a little bit. And you really have to do this while the paint is wet. If it starts drying, you'll start lifting it, and then it won't be very pretty when you're done. I've got a little bit of a hard line there. I want to blend that a little bit more black. Super fun background here. You can just continue to play and play and play with it until you've got it a beautiful, rich color in the background. I'm going to grab a little tiny drop of water because my paint is a little dry over here and it's dragging, but it has to be a tiny drop of water. You get too much water and you'll start lifting your paint. Okay, so I'm not really sure how well you can see that. It's got a little bit of a burgundy tint in the background. I'm going to let it dry because if it doesn't have enough red when it dries, because that red can really fade down into that black, I'm going to go back over it a second time. So down here on the table part, I want to create a little bit of a brown color, so you can kind of see my burgundy where it kind of all goes back in there. I think I am going to have to come back in and add a little bit more. So I want to put some brown down here across my table. Wipe off, pick up some black because I want to bring some black in here. From the edges. Go back to my brown because I want more brown through the middle. We're not going to see a lot of this table here. Just go across your line right there. And then I'm just going to very lightly blend, smooth it out, go back and forth to get it nice and smooth. I mean, you can make this table look as table-y top as you want to. If you're worried about keeping your line straight here, you can put a piece of, let your upper part dry and put a piece of tape across there. But we've got our book that's going through here. We're not going to see a whole lot of the tabletop at all. So I don't want you to stress out too much about how that table looks. If it you want more brown in it, but you're not seeing the brown that you want to see, add just a scooch of the white in with, or the warm white in with that brown. And you can put that in there, a little bit more brown, and create a little bit more depth in your tabletop. Go into some black. We want to make sure some of that black comes across there. We don't want to keep it too streaky. A little bit more brown here. And like I said, you're not going to see probably much of this table tile, so I don't want you to work super hard at it and feel like it's not going anywhere. Now my upper part is not quite dry. I want to get it dry because I want to add more burgundy in the background up there. Okay, my upper part is dry, my lower part's still a little wet, but I want to work a little bit more up in here. So I'm going to put some more deep burgundy out on my palette. The wall area is what we will see more of in this design. So I'm going to grab some more burgundy and really lay it in there. Teeny tiny bit of white. More burgundy. And now I'll go into some of my black. I'm going to put a little more burgundy out here. I think I'm going to take my burgundy out a little bit farther than what I originally was thinking. So now we just want to add some black in here. Grab a little drop of water so I can keep it wet and gently blend it. Blend a little bit of that black into that burgundy. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about the tabletop because our book is going to cover, all of our elements are going to cover a majority of that. Okay, so this should show up quite a bit more now. We've got more layers on here, so a little bit more burgundy over here. I just keep grabbing some paint and then laying it in and wiping off the excess. I'm way back on the handle of the brush. And tickle blend. Make sure your paint is still wet. If it is not wet, you're not going to be able to soften out. If it's just a tiny bit tacky, but it still appears to be pretty wet, you can grab a little drop of water from your palette and blend it out. But if you get too much water, you'll just start removing your paint. Now you can keep your upper background completely black if you want. You don't have to add all of this color in the background if you don't want to, but I think it gives it a really fun little look. A little bit more burgundy in there. A little drop of water and blend, blend, blend. Tickle blend. Tickle blend is just using the tips of the brush and tickle blending, but you have to have a little bit of moisture in your brush to do this. You can't do it without moisture. And again, there's that fine line of getting too much moisture and simply removing paint. So take your time with it and don't get too stressed out about it. So now we've got to get this completely dry, and we're going to transfer on our line drawing. Okay, my background is dry. It feels dry. If it's cool to the touch, it is not dry yet. So you can see, we can just see a light brown in the background. Like I said, a lot of that's going to be covered up, and then I've got that burgundy kind of more in the center of the back. So I'm going to take my line drawing and lay it on my board. And hopefully I have it on here straight, but I can draw my line on here, my shelf line on here pretty straight, so I don't have to worry too much. I'm just going to tape it down with a couple pieces of Scotch tape, and then I'm going to transfer on everything except for the writing on the book. So I'm going to grab a small stylus, and I think I'll use this end. I'm not really sure what size this is, but this is a package of styluses that I bought off of Amazon. A lot of different sizes on here, so I really like that I have my option to transfer on every line except for this kind of written stuff that's on here. I can see my candle is not quite level in the back, so try to draw that on a little bit more level. My pencil. And then my book. And every now and then make sure your line drawings are coming off like they should, that you don't have your graphite paper going the wrong direction. I feel like I'm missing a line here. Look at my original line drawing. Okay. No, that's where the edge of the book is there. I felt like something wasn't right there. Oops, didn't follow my line at all right there. Goodness gracious. So yeah, try and follow your lines, especially when you're drawing in your book. You want to make sure that it looks like a book when you're done, because I made a mess of that right there. I'm just going to erase that and redraw those lines, because that is a terrible mess. I'm not going to be able to tell what line is what there. That's why you want to put two pieces of tape up here, because that one wasn't stuck very good. That way you can lift up and rearrange things. Oops, stylus would be better. Alright, let's try this again. Okay, that looks much better. I want to make sure I've gotten all of my lines here. I can tell what is what. So you can see back here the table line, which is right about here. We'll see a little bit of it right here and some over here, maybe just a scooch of it here. So you don't have to worry too much about the table line. Take the pattern off because I don't need it anymore. I'm going to mark up 3 1/4 inches. Maybe I'll do it on this side where I can see my mark. 3 1/4 is right about there. Doesn't have to be exact. If you want to come up 3 1/2, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to put my T-square here, and I'm just going to draw my table line where I can see it. And that seems to be higher than what I have on my line drawing. My line drawing shows it going a little bit lower on my 3 1/4. Nope, it's 3 1/4, but I think I have to go 3 1/8 here. Okay, I've got this pushed against the side here. So 3 1/8, I think, looks like where it should be on my line drawing. You can make it 3 1/4 and have it showing back here, but I didn't want to mess with trying to shade back there. Okay, so we're going to change that to 3 1/8. And that looks pretty straight. Okay, so now we're ready to add some base coats in here on this. You really shouldn't need your line drawing anymore unless I decide to come back in and add some details. I'm thinking about putting some stripes on the cup. So if I do that, then we will need the line drawing. You will need it because I am creating this as I paint it. So I don't really know what else I'm going to be adding along the way. But right now it looks like it's going to stay pretty basically this, except for maybe a stripe or something, a couple of lines or something on the cup is my plan. So let's start getting some base coats in. Okay, I'm going to start by painting the book in, and I'm going to make it a gray color. So I'm going to take my black and a little bit of warm white. And I'll just start painting in the book part, the book edge and the binding. And I'm just going to mix paint as I go. If it ends up being a little bit different in value, that's perfectly fine. Try to not get out of my lines there. I want it to look like an old book, but I'd still like it to stay a little bit more, book form. So I'm just mixing my black and warm white together. Get this gray value. It's kind of a medium to dark gray value. Leans a little bit more towards the medium side than the dark. We're going to paint this in here dark. That's part of the binding. And this drops down a little bit. Okay, so that's pretty good for the book. Okay, got a good start there. I'm going to base the pages in with some light mocha. My light mocha needed shook up really bad. Ooh, that's a lot. Grab a bigger brush for this. Paint all of my pages in with this. I'm going to try and keep all the sections separate. As best I can, as I make a big huge mess. I think I should get a different brush. This one might be a little bit big. And it'll take a couple of coats, so I'm going to go all the way up to my line that I put on there. Grab a little drop of water so my paint will move a little easier. When I start getting into detail areas, I'm going to get this up on my easel so you can see it a little bit better. But turn your project as you need to. 8 by 10 is the size I'm working on here. I'll go to a little bit smaller brush to finish out the edges of the pages. And like I said, these will need 2 coats on here, so get everything base coated in, because that's the least fun part when it comes to painting. We'll get it all base coated in, and then we can start adding all the fun details. Okay, so there's the base coat in of our book pages. Well, the first coat. It still will require 2 coats. I'm going to paint this pencil in real quick. Now, with the pencil, I want to use Moon Yellow, but Moon Yellow is a discontinued color. So if you do not have Moon Yellow, you can use Golden Straw. It's just a slightly darker color. Either one will work just fine. So I still have quite a bit of this Moon Yellow left. And let's get it used up. No sense in having paint go to waste. So I'm just going to paint the basic part of the pencil in. Try to keep your pencil straight. If you need to tape off each edge with some Scotch tape, you can certainly do that. Go right up to those graphite lines that you have on here. Okay, so there's the beginning of the basic part of the pencil. Let's paint the tip of it in with some warm white. You can mix a little tiny yellow with that. Make it a pale yellow. That way when we come back in and add our highlights in here, we'll be able to see them a little bit more. Again, everything's going to need 2 coats. I'm not going to worry about the lead part. This metal part back here is going to be gold. Let's pull out a little bit of antique gold and we'll mix that with our Moon Yellow. So I'm just going to Moon Yellow and get some of that moisture out of my brush. 1 Moon Yellow and 1 antique gold. That's the antique gold there. Should make it a little bit darker than what the pencil itself is. If you brush it on here and you can't tell the difference, a little bit more antique gold needs to go in the mix. So see, I can tell the difference. So it's just the first coat, so no worries here. The eraser is going to be orange, so I'm going to take some burnt orange and mix a little bit of your moon yellow or your antique gold, either one. It gives you a nice kind of peachy orange color. And we'll put our eraser out here on the end. Okay. The candle, I'm thinking I want to make it blue. I'm not 100% sure on that. Now this is open water. It's a kind of a darker blue, but it's a watery, that's a color that goes good with water. So if you don't have that, you can grab any kind of tealish color blue that you like, or like desert turquoise or something like that. I'm going to put a little shoreline out because I don't want it to be quite as dark as that, so I'm going to mix some paint here. So I'm going to grab one of each and mix them together and get kind of a middle value between the two. And we'll paint our candle in with this color. And again, everything gets 2 coats, so I just want to make sure my candle looks kind of straight back there. Looks a little bit crooked, so give it a little bit more on this edge over here. Smooth it out. And then I think our cup, I'm going to paint it in with warm white, I think. I'll start with this bigger brush, but I'm sure I'm going to have to go to a smaller one. Oops, kind of got it on my book there. Base coating is the least fun thing to do, but it sets the foundation for everything else that goes on top. So being sure to take your time and be careful with how everything looks is important. Of course, first coats are never going to look good, but grab my round brush and finish out the handle. Then I want everything here to dry well before I put my second coat on. We don't have to worry about the flame and the wick and all that stuff until after we have gotten our candle done. So don't worry about that part of it. My candle doesn't quite look straight here, so that looks better. Okay, that looks good. That's first coats, base coats. So completely dry, apply a second exactly like you did the first. Okay, all of mine are dry. I laid my line drawing back on here. And you don't have to take it off when you're base coating. You can leave it on there. That way when you lay it on, you know you've got it lined up right. I used gray graphite to transfer on the cup line and a couple of details on the book here. Well, actually just one. Everything else we can pretty much see where it goes. If you can't see where your separations are, like if you can't tell where the separation of the top page is off of these other pages, and the same here, if you can't tell that these are lower pages down here, you may want to draw a line in here, or transfer that line on. Here, I'll just transfer it on for you. Right here is where the top edge of this page is. Okay, so you'll want to know where that is, and you'll want to make sure you know where the two separations are here. I didn't quite paint it in right there, or right here, or right here. I tried to leave that a little bit unpainted as well, but it didn't work out so well. And then I transferred this line on right here. It's actually a dual line. It's two lines. The top one you probably won't see, and then there's a second one down here, and I use my white graphite paper and my white graphite paper to get the edge of my candle up here. Okay, so we've got everything transferred on now that we need. We should not need our line drawing again. I'm thinking about adding some lines onto this, so if I do, when you transfer on the remainder of your lines, you will also transfer on the lines that will go onto this cup here. Okay, I think the next step I'm going to do is go in and add some of the writing in the book. Now, you're not making words per se, you're just making what appears to be some handwritten stuff in here. It's going to be more linear looking because we're looking at it at an angle, so don't make great big swooping stuff going on, because we don't really know what words are being written here. Okay, so just a little bit of a look of some handwritten stuff on there. I'm using an Identa pen. This is a dual tipped one. It's got a fat nib and a smaller nib, and I use the smaller one and just lightly let it kind of skim across the pages there. I didn't push real hard. If your ink is kind of draggy, even better. Gets that more worn out kind of look on there. So I've got on my palette warm white, deep burgundy, burnt umber, lamp black, and my open water, my blue color, or whatever color you're making your candle. We're going to work on the book binding first, and I'm going to use just a small round to do this because it's really just going to be some dabbing colors on here, and then we'll do a little bit of floating to settle things in. But right now we're just going to kind of dab at this, getting it a little bit more roughed and worn here. So I'm going to take my warm white first, and I'm just going to start creating some dabby stuff, especially on the corner, maybe along here. Just create some places that maybe this is a little bit of a highlight of some kind. Again, it's just a little dabby dab. Don't be too serious about this. got other colors we're going to be putting in here. This is going to make the edges look a little more worn and rough. This book is used a lot. We want it to look used a lot. I'm going to put a little bit along this edge here, but we will be darkening this. We won't be keeping it bright like that. So, you know, just be aware that it's going to be a little bit darker as we build on this. So that is our first little layer of dabby dabs, and we may come in and add a few more of that warm white in there as we build the age of this book. So next I'm going to add a little bit of the burnt umber in here. And burnt umber is kind of a transparent color. I'm going to thin it down with water so it comes off my brush a little bit easier. So I'm going to put some over this light section that we did. I'm going to put some back in here. This is all going to be dark in here. Just kind of scooch it in there. It doesn't have to be smooth or anything. And then we're just going to start adding some of this burnt umber all along our book edge. Kind of a hit and miss kind of thing. And just kind of lightly, almost scrubbing it in. Put a little bit more in here. This is going to be super dark in there. Thin your paint down a little bit with water so it can just come off of your brush so easily, and just kind of scrub it in there. So that's some burnt umber, and you notice we're not covering up all of our gray that we started with, so don't do that. We don't want to cover up all that gray yet. Okay, let's take a little bit of the deep burgundy. Again, I'm going to thin this down with some water, and we're not going to put this in a ton of places, just a few. Give a little bit of color variance here. And this is just, again, in a few places. Don't fill it up. Let's add just a little bit of blue in here. This is going to be just a little bit. I'm going to keep it a little bit more on the outer edge out here. Just kind of skimming it along the edge. Just lightly. Just up on the tippy toe of that brush, just give it a little bit. Anytime you feel like you get something too wide or too big, you can just come back with your base color or one of your other colors and tone it down a little bit. I did decide I'm going to put stripes on my cup, so I went ahead and drew some lines on there. Okay, that's the open watercolor. Okay, or whatever color you're using in your candle, we want to add that color in here somewhere. Okay, we're going to add a little touch of black here and there, and then we're going to do some shading and stuff. I want some black back here because this is going to be darker back in here. We are going to be floating some color in there, but we'll just kind of scooch a little dark stuff going on back there, and maybe this can go a little bit closer to our pages, but then we want a few kind of more dirty spots along our book binding, so just a little bit. We don't want to hide all of our colors that we've got, and some of these colors will come back and do a couple more times, I think, especially our warm white. If you don't have warm white, you can use just straight snow white. You can tell I hardly have any paint on my brush here. Right now it just looks like a jumbled up mess. So we're going to start smoothing some of this out. I'm going to switch over to a 3/8 inch angle brush here. And we're going to take some of our burnt umber and a tiny little bit of black. Make like a soft black color. I think we do have soft black in our palette list, so you could technically get that out. I haven't used it yet, so you know, if I can mix it, I'd rather mix it. And I'm going to add a little bit more water into my brush. Keep this kind of light. And I'm going to go around the pages with this color. Just start to smooth stuff out a little bit. I'm going to go inside the book here. Mix me a little bit more water in my brush. I'm going to smooth that out right in there. And then continue on along our book pages. Okay, now this time I want to go with just some black. And I'm going to put it right in here. This area right here is going to be the darkest. So I'm going to put it right there. That's way back inside that book there. Bring it out and blend it a little bit with that brown color that we put in there. And then I'm going to continue with the black here. This is going to be a dark area here. And work it out a little bit. And through here. And I'm just going to take the edge of this brush and go along my pages. This is black. Not much paint on my brush. It's thinned a little bit with some water so it flows nicely. So we put that mix on there first, and it came out just a little ways from those pages, and this is going right up against those pages. Starting to look more and more like a book binding. Okay, I want to take the blue color, my open water color here. I'm going to add a little bit of, I think I'll add just a teeny tiny bit of black to it. You can add some burnt umber to it, but I mean just a tiny bit. I want to really dirty up that blue. I don't want the book to look quite so bright out here on this outer edge. So we're going to take this color all the way down and around the entire book. I'm going to mix just a tiny bit more here. Put a little bit of it down through here and on this upper edge here. Mix some more. And I'll probably have to repeat this to get it a nice smooth color. Okay, so I'm going to go back and repeat. And mix me a little bit more of this. Now you can make your outer edge whatever color you want. If you want your book to be more of a brown color, then certainly you can make it brown. If you want it to be a red book, you can use that burgundy, mix a little bit of black with it, and make yours a more red book. And this is my open watercolor and some black mixed in with it. And I think I want to bring it just a little bit up onto these wider areas, just a little bit. I want the book to appear blue with some just aging kind of dirty stuff on it. So that is looking pretty good. Okay, I'm going to take my burnt umber and work it into my brush. I'm still using my angle brush, just the corner of it, nice side float, and I want to put a little bit more of this color on here. I really want it to look a little more right there next to those pages, a little bit more dirty, I guess. But the black was a little bit stark, so I'm just going to skim over this with a light layer of burnt umber. Burnt umber is transparent anyway, so it's not going to take away from anything. That's looking pretty good. We're going to add some highlights on it in a minute. I want to darken right in here. This is the darkest area. And I'm going to put a little bit, this is lamp black, I'm going to put a little bit here because that's getting a little bit of a shadow, and this is getting just a little bit of a shadow from the binding here. Okay, and you can continue to dirty up the book as much as you want. I might make a little bit more of that mix of blue and black, but make it just slightly darker. And with this, I'm going to do a hit and miss along my outer edges. I don't want my edges to be super bright. So just a little kiss of this here and there. Keep some of that little bit of brighter color. Okay, that was with the blue and black, and a lot more black than I had originally, so it's going to be a little bit brighter. So I'm going to highlight now, and I'm going to take my warm white and add a tiny little bit of black to it. I might also add a little bit of burnt umber to give it a little bit more of a dirty highlight. Okay, my warm white, a little tiny bit of black here, which will make it I wanted a light gray value, really light, and then we'll dirty it up with just a little bit of burnt umber, a little bit more warm white, tiny bit more burnt umber, just make this dirty light gray color. I'm going to touch my brush to my paper towel because I don't want a ton of this, which I feel like there's still a ton on my brush, and I'm going to kind of just work this onto especially the corners, where the corners will be a little bit more worn. And if you can tell where you put your previous warm white when we were tapping colors on, you can put a little bit in those areas, just kind of skim it, almost dry brush it on here. And along the book binding here, I'll put just a little bit. I am seriously, because I tapped my paintbrush before I came to my surface here, I am seriously just dry brushing this on here, just skimming it across. It'll be a little bit more darker and bold in the corners, but still it's going to look pretty rough and textured, so we want to keep that textury kind of worn look. And you know, if you get too much, you can take a baby wipe or your wet finger and just kind of remove some of that. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of burnt umber over here and not make it quite so bright. I'm going to add this on the corners. I just picked up a tiny bit of burnt umber. And we'll just dirty that up a little bit more than it already is. Pretty worn book edge. I think that looks pretty good. Again, if you want more of your color to pop back, take your blue. I'm going to still mix it with a tiny little bit of black, or you can mix it with some burnt umber and maybe just skim some of this on here. Wipe some more of that off. This is only if you feel like you've lost some of your blue on here. If you want your book to definitely show as a blue book, then I'll put a little bit more of that on there. But I think that's going to finish up our book nicely. I like the way it looks. So we're going to get ready to move on to these pages now. And we want the pages to look a little bit worn and used as well. This is a book that you write in every day or you read every day. Maybe it's your journal. I'm symbolizing it as your journal book that you write in every day. Okay, for our pages, I'm just going to stick with that 3/8 inch angle brush. We're going to, well, first let me grab a small flat brown brush because I want to create a darker area in here. So I'm going to take my burnt umber and a little bit of black, make that dirty brown color, and we're going to make this a little darker in here. Right through there. Pages are a little lifted there, so we're seeing a little bit more depth right there. Maybe this one is lifted right here. So that's just some of that burnt umber and black color. And we'll probably bring this in a little bit to add a little bit more to our pages, but we're going to start with just the burnt umber. Okay, so load for a float, which means you have water in your brush, you load a little bit of paint on the corner, and you blend it into your brush. So we want to create a little bit of almost line edges here. Let me do it over here because this is bigger, so you'll probably be able to see it better. So you can kind of see we just pulled out a little bit to give it the look of some lines. water in your brush, a little bit of paint. This is burnt umber, so it is transparent. It's a perfect color for us to start with, so we don't get too much on here too quickly. Okay, we're just creating the illusion of some pages. We will go all the way across here, but I want to get the look of it at the edges here first. This one's going to be a little bit harder, and down here a little bit trickier because it's so flat. Okay, so then we're going to take that burnt umber, now that we've kind of got ourselves a guideline of sorts, and we're going to just bring some of this across and start creating the look of some pages on here. This is still very, very light, so don't, we can't see the edges of the page over there, so don't worry about those. So in through here, it's just a little bit of burnt umber through there, so we can kind of start beginning to see where our pages are. I'm going to make this a little bit darker through here. And through here. And we may have to come back with a detail liner to get some of these individual page looks, but now we're going to take some of this burnt umber and keep it sheer in your brush. That means you have water in your brush, you're side loading with some burnt umber, and you're blending them together. That gives you this nice, extremely soft, light color. We're going to go in the center here, both sides. So we're setting up the stage for all of our future stuff. We're going to go around the page kind of in a hit and miss kind of thing. You don't have to do the entire page, but we're going to add some highlights on here later, and I'm going to put some of this across the page. So you can see it's such a, I'm going to show you how my paint looks on my palette here. So I'm going over here and picking up some water because I always have clean water over here. Get a little drop of burnt umber and really work it. See how light and that color is? Nice light sheer color. Worked softly into your brush. I'm just going to skim this across and a little bit on the outer edges of the pages. Make it look more old, I guess is the word I want to say. Old, worn. You know, maybe this is a journal that you wrote in years ago, but you grabbed it to read it. I don't know. It's your book. It can be any kind of book that you want it to be, but this is how we're creating it in my mind. Okay, so now we're going to take our burnt umber and add a little bit of black to it. Make that dirty brown color. We're still keeping this a nice sheer color here. Water loaded in my brush, and we're going to darken up along this edge and pull some of this through the book. Very thin. I'm going to do the same here. Pull this direction. This will give us the look of some of our pages going on here. Do along this edge a nice soft float and then pull. I'm going to go underneath this top page here and make it a little bit darker right there. Mix a little bit more. pull a little bit. This is where you might want to go to a detail brush here to pull a few through here. And I'm going to go underneath that page there and this page here, kind of smooth that out. We do want a few like lines coming through here to make it look more than 2 pages are over here. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit more. I want to put a little bit of this color underneath this top page here, right along that edge, and then just, okay, so we're getting the look of a book here, and we'll take a little bit of this and put again in our center. We're not going to go as far out as we did, and we can put a little bit of this here and there, and again, you're not going to put it every place, I mean just a few places here and there on the pages. I'm really dirtying them up. Okay. I'm going to take a detail liner brush, and you use whatever is your favorite one. I'm going to do that black and burnt umber mix. And thin it out to inky consistency for my brush. And I'm going to put just a few darker lines along the edge. And we're just creating these. This gives it the depth over here, like we kind of got going over here. And then we'll go along this side. Don't get carried away and do too many. Okay, and I'm going to come over here and add some that looks pretty good. So we're going to take that mix that we were just using to make those lines, and we're going to darken right here with a little float of this color. And I want it to go across. I want to go underneath this one a little bit and just slightly under that one. Create that little bit of a darker lift there. And then I want to put very lightly this color on our edges. A little bit along the top edge there. Turn it this way. I'm keeping that line kind of right there so I can see the separation between the side and the bottom of the pages. A little bit of this burnt umber and black mix. It's a little bit darker than our original mix. We created some lines on here. And I'm going underneath this main page here. Kind of setting it up to show more on top. I'm going to add a little bit of this mix along this edge because it's kind of more in the shadows over here than the highlight. So we'll keep it a little bit darker over here on this edge. And so now we're just going to add a highlight on our book pages, and we should be done with our book. So I'm going to use the warm white with my detail liner, thin it out with clean water. And first we'll go along here and add a few highlights. Any of these steps you feel need repeated, you can come back and repeat anytime. Make sure our lines are coming across straight. I need a little bit more water. It should flow off of your brush pretty easily. And I'm not getting it to flow at all, so I'm not sure what the issue is here. I'm just going to tap a little bit along that edge right there, just pitty-pat tap, and we'll put some of this okay. Let's come over to this edge. Oops, I'll get it on there where I want it in just a minute. I want to come along this edge that I've lifted, and just a few streaks down through here. And these, because we're adding water in them to make them an inky consistency, could end up being, you know, a little bit fade in there, so you might have to come back and add a couple more bright ones in there. Okay, we're going to highlight on the book itself with that warm white. On the book pages, I guess I should say. Add a little bit of water to my brush, and I'm just side loading, making this very soft. We're going to highlight. A little bit more paint on my brush here along this edge. A little bit along this edge. Up here. It's just a subtle little highlight. I'm going to streak a little bit of this across my page. A little bit more brighter stuff on here. Don't go into your binding area. We may darken that just a little bit. I think it's going to need some darkness. Right through here is going to be the highest part of this page, so I'm just going to scoot some of that all along right there. Probably not even on camera for that one. Right through here. Just tap some in there. This is the brightest part of this page right here. Put a little bit more along this edge. I'm going to add a little bit of this kind of in a back and forth motion right through here. Kind of present that as a little bit brighter area. I'll put a little bit on this edge, but I don't want a whole lot because this is really more in the shadows. I do want this to be much brighter through here, and especially on this edge right here. So I can start bringing in some just white to really make that bright there. And I want it brighter through here. There we go. Finally, I couldn't get the paint to come off my brush for nothing there. A little bit more through there. And again, you can just continue to play and layer and layer. We're doing fairly light layers except for this this warm white color. I'm putting it on a little bit thicker than I have all my other layers of color. And I really want this to be bright. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to darken a little bit right here. And right here on this edge, this is with that burnt umber and black mix. And let's go ahead and take this color down our center. We need it just a little bit darker through here. And that looks pretty good. Alright, I think we're going to call the book done. The book is completely done now. I really like how it is looking. So we are going to move to the candle next, I think. I think we'll do the candle, the pencil, then the mug. Okay, I'm coming back with just a little bit of lamp black right here, just right up against the top of that book page, just a little bit to create that little bit more of a, you know, lifted page. Okay, now we're moving to the candle here. All right, our candle, we're going to use the color, what do I have, Midnight Blue. You can use deep Midnight Blue. Royal Navy may work if you have that, navy blue, some kind of dark blue. These colors are a little bit more transparent, so it makes for nice layering of color. So we're going to side load a 1/2-inch angle brush or a flat brush, whatever you like to use. And we're going to start creating our dark edge. Now, like I said, this is a pretty transparent color. I'm going to get just a little bit more paint on my brush here. And we're going to go along this edge of our candle next to our book here and bring this color up to the top. I'm going to bring it over quite a ways and see if I can find my mop brush here to mop it while it's wet. Mine about dried out before I could mop it. You have to, since it's drying, I can be a little bit firmer with my brush, but when it's wet, you do not want to be this firm because you'll just lift all your paint up. So I'm going to put some of this up here in the well area. Start creating where the wax is kind of melting in here. Our dark area in there, and this needs to be dry before we can go on and add a second layer, and mine's pretty dry because I used that mop brush on there. If yours is not dry, you might want to blow dry it. I'm going to apply a second layer of this color on here. A little bit more paint because I want to bring that over. Mop brush. Now it's pretty wet, so I'm going to very lightly tap this. I just want to gently blend it out. I'm going to remove some of that paint I've picked up off of my brush And you can, if yours is really super wet, you might want to let it dry just a little bit before you mop it like this, because you're going to just lift paint and then you won't be too happy about that. So that is our second little layer. I'm going to go in here and add some more in here. I want to keep the edges out here kind of loose and not formed so tightly into a loop shape. So don't let that happen. So now I really need to get this dry. Okay, I need that to get good and dry. So while it is drying, I want to add a little bit of the burgundy into my book pages here. So I'm going to take my deep burgundy and mix a little tiny bit of black or burnt umber, either the one, dirty up that burgundy color, kind of tone it down a little bit. I'm going to add burnt umber because I like the color that it brings out. And I'm just going to put a little bit of this color in just a couple of places on my book. That's going to carry the background color into the painting a little bit more. And if you didn't add burgundy into your background, you can dirty up some of your shading color of blue with some black or burnt umber and put that on your book. So again, while that's drying, I'm going to add paint my stripes on my cup in, and I'm still a little bit unsure of what color I want to use here. Oh, I don't want the cup to stand out. The book is the focus point. So I think I'm going to make my stripes black. So you see I've got a line there, a line, I've got 4 lines. Well, this is a fat line in here. So we're going to paint this line in with some black. You can go with burnt umber, you can go with blue, you can go with your more burgundy color. And I think I'm going to add a little bit of warm white to that and make it not quite pure black here. I'll make it a gray value, I think would be nicer. That way I can shade along the edges and it will show up a little bit more. So I'm just adding some warm white on my brush while this black paint is still wet. And we'll just make it a medium to dark gray value. Across here. And then I'm going to put a stripe up here. And a stripe down here. Ooh, that's a white stripe. I'll have to thin that down just a touch. I gave too much pressure on my brush as I was coming across there, so it made that stripe a little wide. So I'll remove it with a damp brush and then I'll come back in and paint it a little bit better. Or not, that still looks pretty. Maybe I'll thicken this one up just a little bit. Or thicken it up a lot. The more pressure you give on your brush, the fatter the line gets. Alright, I'm going to straighten this one up because it's got too much of a curve in it. And then I'll let this dry and we'll put another layer of paint on there. That looks a little bit better. Okay. Alright, I'm going to leave that there. Almost looks like the kind of mug you'd get at a restaurant. What? Except it's not. So paint it according to what you like. I'm going to take my, let's see, what color did I base coat this in with? Warm white? Grab some fresh warm white. I'm going to clean up those edges a little bit. So you can be doing all of this while your candle is drying, or making a mess like I'm doing here. I think I want this edge to curve a little bit more. It looks a little more rounded. This edge needs to curve more, so I'm going to have to draw my line in here, going up a little bit, not quite so straight across. Start to say what I do with my brush. It's in my hand. It's in my hand. Oh my gosh, I bet you've never done that ever. Okay, let's curve this up a little bit. So you get all my, everything that I do in my design process. I like to design right on camera because I just feel like you can learn so much more that way. Okay, so I can clean up in the background here. I'm going to put a little water on there, and then take my white plastic eraser and remove that paint. You can do that because the paint hasn't cured yet, so very easy to remove with a white plastic eraser, a little bit of water. These two items, the ident pen and the eraser, I do sell on my website, lonnalamb.com. Okay, so that looks so much better. Okay, changing the color of my mug here, because I know when I go to add highlights on here, it is not going to show up. Started to paint some black stripes on there. Do not like the black stripes. So we're going with a light gray color here. So I'll change that in my instructions that we'll be making a light gray value for our mug. And painting it in with that color instead of the warm white. I want to be able to add a highlight on here. And with the warm white, it just would not show up enough. So light gray. Might even go a little bit darker than that light of a gray once it dries. Okay, I'm going to do something different on the mug over here. I'm going to do a blue Delft type look. So we're going to take our midnight blue, which is a pretty transparent color, and add some water to it and get it a nice thin color. And I've painted a circle here, or not painted, I've drawn a circle here because this is where I want to start my flower. And I'm going to put some flowers out here. some flower petals, I guess I should say. And let me do some over here. Grab a little bit more water. And I'm going to make it a little bit darker in the very center here. Pretty dark right through here. You know, try to make it look like a circle. And now I'm going to take my detail liner and on this particular flower I'm just going to add some little lines all the way around it. Okay. This one I'm going to add a center here with a circle and a center on this one, which I made quite a bit bigger, with a circle. I'm going to add a dot here on each one of these petals. Okay, I'm going to do some petal-like shapes on here, going out past what I drew. You can do any kind of style of Delft that you want to on here. And let's go around these. And it's not the prettiest, but up on the tippy toe. Take a little bit of that gray mix here. And put a little bit of it through here. Kind of separate that. I'm going to put some of this color in the center. This is the gray color, which is the light gray, which we painted the background with. Okay, so while that dries, I'm going to make this just a little bit darker around here. And let's see, I'm going to add some little swirly things coming off of this. And again, you can do yours as much or as little as you would like onto yours. There's no right or wrong when it comes to this. I mean, just kind of have fun with it. I'm going to be adding some little stroke work in here as well. So I'm just going to add those in there. Oh, hope you've been on camera for this. Probably haven't even been on camera for any of it. Just want to do a little bit of a swirl inside here. And I'm going to grab my small round and do some little stroke work on here. Put some up here. And then you just create yours the way that you would like it to look. And just little little Delft look on here. Let me grab a little drop of water. And I'm going to put some, looks like it's coming off over here. So you can kind of even it out and then just add a few little dots here and there. And that's going to finish out that look. It's just some basic little stroke stuff. You can do as little or as much as you would like to do on your cup, but I just wanted to give it a little bit of a Delft look there. I think that is going to really make it pretty. Now in my instructions I'm going to continue on with the candle and then put in the instructions for the cup. But when you're painting on your own, if you're waiting for something to dry, skip on ahead and do another area somewhere while you're allowing paint to dry. I'm going to take a little bit of that blue, and it's a very sheer color, put some of that in here. On the book as well. Bring all of our colors together very nicely. Now we're ready to go back to the candle because I can't finish the cup till I make sure that all of that has dried. Alright, let's darken on our candle here. I'm going to take my midnight blue and add a little bit of black to it to really darken that up. Now remember, black can be overpowering, so add a little bit at a time. I'm going to make this a really rich dark blue, make it more opaque, and we're going to go along. This edge, I'm going to mop that because it's just a jumbled mess there. This will help soften it and bring it all together. We're going to do that a couple of times. I'm going to put some of this in the center, down here, just in the really darkest area down in here. Take the water edge of the brush and really work that out. Okay, make sure it's dry before you reapply it. Mix your blue and your black again. If you need to add a little bit more black to it because it's still just too light of a color, then do that. I'm going to grab a little bit of water on my brush because I really want to be able to move this paint. Stay off of my book. I only want to bring this dark value over about halfway, whereas we brought the first shading that we did over about 2/3 of the way across our candle. Again, I'm just using my mop brush, softening out these values here. And one more time down in here. Get that really dark color and smooth it out. Okay, so now we need to go around the book here and have a little bit of shading, so I'm going to go into just my blue color here and bring that around the book all the way. And then we'll darken that as well when it dries. Grab my mix here. I need to get a little bit closer to the book right here. These areas will definitely be darker areas. Just tap a little bit in there. Make sure your previous layer is dry. I'm not sure my previous layer was dry because that looks like it lifted a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go around my book again with this darker color. And take my mop brush and mop that. I'm going to have to wash over this area with the dark color because I removed a little bit of paint right there. Okay, we need to let this get dry now so that we can start working on our highlighting, and so that I can fix that area right there. That's pretty dry, so let's see if I can fix that. Gently mop that. You have to let it dry. You'll just make it worse. A little bit more in here. Got a little hard line there. I don't really like that. Not really sure how that happened. Okay, that's a lot better. I like that. So really the only area that has our base color is like a section right through here and around our edge up here. Now when you're using your mop brush, you use it dry, clean it on a wet spot on your paper towel that doesn't have paint, and then dry it off. That blue will probably stain my mop brush a little bit. I can wash it with some soap and rinse it very good, and hopefully that will take it out when I'm done painting with it. I don't want to do it right now. Okay, so we can start adding some highlights onto our candle now. Okay, I'm going to take my shoreline, which was in the mix of our base coat, and add a little bit of warm white to it. We'll probably do equal mixes here, just equal amount of both colors. We'll see if this is going to be light enough. I might have to add, nope, it's going to be plenty light enough. And so I'm just going to kind of dry brush this down this edge. Just kind of pulling the brush. I have it loaded for a float, but I don't have as much water in my brush as I normally do. And I'm just going to bring it over a little bit onto that candle. And I want to do a little bit on the edge up here. Across the edge. Keep it out of my center there. We'll go across the back edge as well. Just the tip of the brush is doing this, so I'm going to pick up just straight shoreline and go along the rest of it here. I don't want a whole lot back this way. I really want that to be a little bit darker right to there. up a little tiny bit of black so I can blend that together. And now I'll go back into my shoreline. I might add a little bit of blue with it so it's not, of the midnight blue, so it's not super bright across there. I'm going to take a little bit of this mix and give a little bit of reflective light over here on this edge of the candle. So just put a, that didn't appear to be very straight, so let's straighten that out. Just a little bit of a highlight over there. I think I'll put a little bit of the midnight blue over that and make it not quite so bright. I don't feel like I got that very straight on the edge there. That's better. Had it out way too far, so just a little kiss of a highlight over here. Alright, this is some more warm white right here. Okay. So with your candle you can just keep building your layers. I'm going to put a little bit more of that deep midnight blue back in here. Okay, that's looking much better. I'm liking that. So let's add just a little bit brighter highlight on our candle and then we'll finish out our flame. The candle doesn't require a whole lot of work to it. Okay, we're going to brighten our highlight with just straight warm white, doing the same way that we did that color, just kind of dragging it down the candle just a little bit. We're not going to cover everything that we covered before. We're just going to do some small kind of key places on there. Okay, so that is going to finish out the candle. It's pretty easy. It's just layers of color. Building your layers with sheer colors makes all the difference. You can put a little bit of reflective the wall color in there if you would like. I'm not sure I'm going to do that yet. I probably will do it on my cup, but I'm not sure about the candle yet. I'm going to think about that. But we're going to do the wick next. So the wick, we're going to use some, we're going to make a gray value, kind of like the gray we've been using throughout, a medium to dark gray. So I'll just take my black and some warm white and make a gray color. Thin it down with some water because I'm going to use my detail liner to put this in, and we're going to bring, it's going to be up in the flame, so we've got to start it up in the flame. I'm going to add just a tiny bit more black to mine. And we're going to bring it down into the candle itself. We're going to shade right there so it pushes it down in there, but we need to make sure it comes all the way to the edge of the front part of the candle. Okay, So now we're going to start adding some colors into our flame. We're going to put some cad yellow out. And again, these are going to be like layers of light colors. I'm mostly going to make this flame kind of a yellow and white color because I don't want to, well, I do have my burgundy color I can add in here. So I'm going to start with this cad yellow, just kind of pity-patting it and kind of walking it up. Now if you've drawn your graphite line in here pretty dark, you might want to kind of lighten that before you paint this on so that it's not too noticeable when you're done. So this is the yellow, and you can make your flame come out as far as you would like. I'm going to wipe my brush off and grab a little bit of warm white. Not a lot, we want this color more at the top. So create a nice little flame like that. I'm going to go into my burgundy, my deep burgundy, and put a little bit of that on my brush. I'm gonna mix it with my yellow to make it more orange instead of keeping it so red. We'll put some of this color down here. And make sure your layers are dry. I'm gonna grab a little more yellow because I feel like I lost my yellow in here completely. And then you can put a little bit of blue down here for that really hot flame. And I'm going to redo my wick now. I'm going to take some lamp black and I'm going to put some at the base down here of this wick. I want to put a little bit kind of in on the wick itself to make it look a little bit more, I don't know, burnt up, and then a little bit of the warm white. And our wick actually needs to come up into our flame just a little bit more. So a little bit of black, bringing that up in there. I want us to see the wick, but not see the wick, you know what I mean? Does that make any sense? A little bit more yellow. Tap some over the wick. And then a tiny bit more white. And that's a lot of white, so I'm going to wipe my brush off and then just tape what I got there and bring it up into the flame a little bit. And these should just be light colors, kind of melding together in this flame. But I do still want it to be a little bit more on the yellow side. I feel like I keep losing my yellow in here. Okay, let's wide angle out because that's going to help the look of it a lot. And we're going to let that dry and probably put a little bit of a glow in there. And I'm going to take a tiny, tiny little bit of black and just shade right here into the dark shadow area of the candle. Right there, just a little bit of black. Okay, so I want a little bit of that yellow glow because I'm going to put a little bit of glow in the background to kind of find its way onto our book. Maybe a little bit of the yellow is kissing right there. We know it's going to be hitting along here, so we'll put a little bit of glow from that candle right there. And you can make it more orange if you prefer the more orangey look. Add a little bit of your burgundy in there and make it a little bit more of an orange glow. Kind of gives a glow onto the book. We'll be putting a little bit of glow onto the cup as well. So once your candle flame is dry, if you have any graphite lines that you can erase, it would be a good time to erase them now. So I think I might add a little bit of, just a tiny little bit of burgundy onto the candle. Just in a couple of places. That gives a little bit of bounce back off of the wall. If you didn't add the burgundy into your background, you don't have to do that, because I would not recommend putting black on there, but I think the candle looks pretty good. My flame is dry, so you want to take some kind of a scruffy brush. I'm just going to take my stencil brush that I have handy here, but you want some kind of stiff little brush, and I'm going to take my yellow and load it onto this brush, and then offload. The brush is dry, load it on, then offload pretty much all of that paint off of the brush completely. And then I'm just going to very, very gently rub this around my candle wick, my flame. To load again. Usually the first time not a lot of paint comes off. And just very, very gently create a little glow on that candle. It doesn't have to be anything huge. Just a little glow around that candle is all you need. I'm going to brighten up a little bit with some white up here. And I might put a little touch of that glow on my candle. Not a lot, because, you know, yellow and blue makes green, and we definitely don't want to create that look. So I just tapped a little bit of white just at the very tip, just little dibby-dabby dots right there. Okay, and then just a little tiny bit right there for a little glow onto the candle. Ooh, let's go back out. So our candle is basically done, our book is done, so we have our pencil and our cup to do. We're going to move over to the cup and do it next. Okay, let's continue on with our cup here. And we're going to start doing some shading on it. I'm going to zoom in and try and keep my palette on camera shot for you. So I'm going to start with Shoreline, which was one of the colors we mixed for the base coat of our candle. It's a very light blue. Very pretty color. I really like this one. Still gives me a little bit of the oceany blue kind of feel. Make a beautiful sky color. So we're going to start shading with this color on our cup. Spreads my palette over here. And I'm going to go down this side of it. Now this is just a really light blue, so we're not going to see, you know, this color's not going to stand out a lot, and we actually don't want it to stand out a lot. Let's do the handles here. Next to our cup itself. And I'm going to go along the outside edge here with just a tiny bit of this paint. Okay, we have to go along the bottom and up by the book and around the book. Oh, not on camera, sorry about that. I came around the bottom, up by the book, and around the book. We want to keep this very soft Let's build our layers softly. That gives you so much more depth when you're doing it that way. I'm going to come along my line right here, but I'm not going to try and get paint on my line because I want to erase that for sure. I'll put a little bit right here along this front edge. Okay, that looks pretty good for a good start. I'm going to put just a little bit of this down inside the cup, just a little bit for like some shadow in here. I'm going to make some steam coming out of the cup. We won't really be able to see what's in the cup because I made it like a mug type cup, so we won't see exactly what's in it. But we'll have some steam coming out of it. I think we'll make it look really nice. I'm going to put some fresh warm white out. I might actually have to use straight white on this. I'll see how warm white looks for a highlight. So I want to deepen the shading on the cup. I don't want the cup to get too overly dark, so we're going to take our shoreline and our open water. These were the two colors that we mixed together to base our candle in with. So we're going to mix those two together. A little bit of water to make it a nice sheer color, and we're going to add this on here. Make sure your first float is dry. And we're going to shade down here. We're just repeating the shading, darkening it up with a little bit darker color, and then we're coming up this edge just about halfway, a little bit inside here. And then the handles. I'm going to grab just a tiny bit more of the open water because I want this to be a little bit darker right here and right here. And then I'm going to come along the outside edge of the cup, a little past halfway coming up. I want to take the open water only and put some of it down here. Make sure your other layer is dry or you're just going to remove what you put on there. And I'm putting some pretty light layers of paint on here. But I will make sure that's dry before I add any more on there, because I do want to darken down here and just right along this edge. Just right on that edge, it's going to be darker. This is still with just the open water. Okay, we don't want our cup to get too dark. I'm going to go back over these areas with my midnight blue that I shaded over because I want those to still stand out. And right here, kind of looks like I got on the book there a little bit, so I may have to darken that shading just a scooch. Okay, let's add our first highlight on here. And we're going to see how the warm white's going to work out. It may not be bright enough. So I'm going to turn this so that I can pull towards me here. And just kind of flick some of this along here. Now in this case, it doesn't matter if we go over our details. I want to erase this line that I put on here. Get it kind of out of the way there. And then take my warm white And I'm going to come across the upper edge of this mug and bring it down this way. I'm going to put some right in here and along the edge right there, and some right here that's going to be getting a little bit of reflection. Streak a little bit more there. This is warm white that I'm using now. I'm going to put some on the handle. I'm going to darken up the shading just a little bit here in a minute. So I want to pull a little bit more highlight down this edge. Just kind of dry brushing it there, giving it a little bit of a glow. Maybe just kiss a little bit coming down right there. And let's create a reflective highlight. Let's put it down here a little bit on the edge down there. And I do want to darken things up a little bit in here. I might try and make the look of some coffee in there. I haven't decided yet. So I want to add a little bit of our, and this is going to be a tiny little bit of our midnight blue. So don't get too much of it on your brush. Work it in with some water. I definitely want to shade down here a little bit darker. And along our book. Sorry about that. Forgot I had my alarm set for something. A little bit here. Let's just kiss a little bit of this midnight blue on there. And definitely needs to be where the handles are. A little tiny bit more right here. Okay, so I'm trying to decide inside the cup if I want to give the look of some coffee inside there. I'm thinking I will because I'm going to have some steam coming out of it. Okay, sorry, didn't have the camera on. Does not bode well for the rest of this design. Okay, so I'm floating some burnt umber inside here. Just putting a little bit in there. I'm going to try and make the look of coffee, maybe. That's down in this cup. I don't really want it up on the edge here, so I'm going to work that out with my damp side of my brush. Kind of give it the look of a little bit of coffee in there. I'm going to repeat that once it dries. And then redo my highlight on here. I think I'm going to go ahead and try and brighten up this edge just a little bit. I'm still just using warm white. I have not used bright white, snow white, or titanium white on this design yet, so since I haven't used it anywhere else, I want to try and keep it just the warm white as my highlights here. So my burnt umber is probably dry enough now. I'm going to put a little bit of white on that, warm white on that outer edge. Once I get my burnt umber the way that I want it to look here. That's a pretty full cup of coffee right there. this way just a little bit. Okay. So now, and you don't have to have anything in yours. Yours could be tea. I don't know. Maybe you like tea more than you like coffee. So I'm going to put some of this warm white along this edge back here. Work it into the toe of this brush and just kind of line it along this back edge. And then I'm going to go back across the front here. And this edge I want to be pretty bright. And I'm going to pull some of this down. And that looks better. Take my damp brush and clean up a few places that I got some paint out of line, so I'm going to dampen it and take my white eraser and very gently remove that. Water on my eraser. Ooh, and now I got a lot. Okay. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now it's up to you if you want to add a little bit of steam coming out of your cup. I am going to do that for sure. So let me grab a small little scruffy brush here. So I've got a little domed scruffy type brush. It's dry. I'm going to take some of my warm white and work it into my brush. And do that a second time. Work it into my brush and then remove pretty much all that paint out of there. Remember, even though you think it's gone, it's not. See how we made that glow? So now I just want to create a little bit of steam coming off of this. Kind of work it up off of the coffee a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit. Just a little bit of steam. Let me wide angle out because it always helps when you can see it in its entirety. So inside my cup here, I think I might take my detail liner brush with a little bit of warm white. Ooh. Got some bristles going crazy there. And put a little bit of swirly stuff in the coffee. I'll zoom in so you can see that. I just made a few little squiggly lines there. And I'm going to add a little bit more of that steam on there, I think, just right where the cup is, right here. Maybe a little bit darker coming out of there. And just make it a little bit of steam. Okay, wide angle. That's going to help it so much more when you can see it at a distance. All right, so we're going to finish our pencil here. I'm going to reflect a little bit of yellow onto our cup for the glow of the candle. Tiny little bit. Teeny tiny. I'm going to add a little tiny bit of white in with that. I mean the tiniest, teeniest, tiniest bit of yellow. And we'll just give a little kiss of that candle on there. And cad yellow is pretty transparent, so remember you're thinning your paint down with some water. And we got a little kiss of yellow on there. And I might let some reflect back here. And then if you want some of the wall color back there to come out onto the cup too, and we'll add some of that on here in just a couple of places. So maybe right here we'll get a little reflection of some of that burgundy. Maybe right there. Okay, let's work on the pencil. Now I took my drawing of my pencil from this pencil that I actually had, and I'm thinking about putting the number 2 on that pencil right there. So this one I'm going to have to zoom you in a little ways for, and it looks like the number 2 is painted in yellow. Now you do not have to do this part. If you feel like that's going to be just too tedious for you, then don't do it. Don't worry about it. But I am going to attempt to put it on there. So we shall see. Now this pencil, let me get you on camera here. This is the middle part of the pencil here. Okay, then it's got like 2 ridges that come down this pencil, and this pencil is so small I'm not sure I can make those ridges appear or not. I am going to attempt it. I'm going to attempt it with a small flat brush and some antique gold. Now if you cannot get yours to appear, then just shade on each side of this pencil with some antique gold and you'll be just fine. So we'll see what I can get done here. So I'm going to come along here and try and create that little bit of a ridge. Along there. I'm going to flip it over and do the other side, and I'm just using a small flat brush here, no water in my brush, just paint. Okay, here we go. Okay, that doesn't look too awful bad right there. So I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to go out here and work on the eraser while that right there dries, because it needs to be completely dry before we add our number 2 and do, you know, kind of dirty up the brush. Dirty up the pencil, not the brush. So I'm going to take some can't think of my colors. I'm going to take a little bit of burnt umber and a little bit of the deep burgundy. Goodness gracious, couldn't think of that color for nothing. And I'm going to mix that, just the 2 mixed together a little bit. And I'm going to put this at the base of the eraser. A little bit more paint so I can see it here. Just darken that up. We made our eraser kind of a peachy orange color, I think. I'm not really sure what colors we even used on that eraser. I'm going to have to go back and look at that. So I'm going to work down here on the pencil. The part that's whittled away here, I'm going to take some white, some warm white, and a little bit of antique gold. And I'm going to make these. Now, let me grab a little more warm white. I want this to show up on this pencil. Make it look like we've kind of cut some stuff out there. Let me move back here to the metal part. That part I'm going to have to do again, but it's wet, so I don't want to continue to try and put stuff there. So back here on the metal, I'm going to take some burnt umber, oops, and I'm going to put it on each side of the metal part. Okay, I want to put it underneath the metal part on the pencil itself. And then I'm going to take this burnt umber. It's sheer, so that's one reason why I like it, and I'm going to go along the bottom side, or the edge of our pencil. And when we shade underneath our pencil, we can kind of straighten up that edge a little bit. I see my edge is just a little bit crooked. I'm going to go back along that edge again. Now, I'm not going to go along the other edge. I'm just going to put the burnt umber along this side, tippy-toeing it right along there. Okay. Alright, let me try this pencil again down here. That should be dry for me to take some warm white and create like some, where it's all worked out of there. I'm going to take my burnt umber and my black, black all over me, and mix them together. A little bit of water in the mix, and I'm going to make my lead on my pencil. And then take my warm white and add a tiny little bit of the antique gold to it. I want to bring that white stuff over the lead a little bit. Okay, I'm going to take my liner brush with some antique gold. I'm going to get ready to do that number 2 here in a minute, but I want to go down this edge one more time with the antique gold. And along this edge. Okay, we're getting some good stuff going on there. And while I have my liner brush, I'm going to grab some burnt umber and thin it down just a little bit. I'm going to put some little lines on here. Okay. So I want to try and get that number 2 on there. So I'm going to take my little round brush here and some black, and again, this is optional if you don't want to do this part. And let's see, it's an oval shape that's on there. So I'm going to put, maybe get the paint to come off of my brush would be nice. I'm going to paint a little oval on there. Okay. So while that's drying, I'm going to take my detail liner and add a little highlight down here on this edge of the pencil lead. And I want to highlight on the eraser. So I'm going to take my warm white and antique gold mixed together and see if I can get a little bit of a highlight on the end of that. darken my cranberry wine right here. Okay. Then I'm going to take my detail liner with some warm white and create some highlights on here. On that part. Another shading of burnt umber, especially down here on this side. We want this a little bit darker down here. Just bring it onto the eraser. Can't tell which side I have paint on. Bring it onto the pencil and next to the eraser. This edge definitely needs to be darker. Okay. I'm going to take my warm white with my detail liner and try and get this where it stands out a little bit more on there. And take my, let's see, I'm going to use some cad yellow and go on the other side of that warm white. Get some out of my bottle here. And put some on this side. Bring it up the center just a little bit. Okay. I'm going to go into some warm white and streak that, or try to streak it up here and give a little highlight. Right through that section that's, you know, more forward. And so now I'm going to try and put that number 2 on my black area. The pencil doesn't require a lot, it's just small to work with. Alright, so it's pretty much the same color as the pencil itself, so I'm going to mix antique gold and cad yellow together to make it a little bit more opaque. Add some water to it to make it nice and thin. And then paint your 2 in. And there we have a number 2 pencil. Okay, I want the lower part of the pencil over here to be darker, so I am going to take my burnt umber, tiny little bit of black, because I want it to appear like there is a shadow on that side of the pencil. And I'm going to take it all the way across this pencil and make it look more shadowy. And we can take this color and kind of put it on the pencil here and there to make it look a little dirty and used, and a little bit of black. It does kind of really dirty up that pencil. That pencil's been around forever, kind of like mine, and so it's pretty well worn here. A little bit of cad yellow over it, so I feel like I really lost my highlight line there. My detail liner. Tap it down a little bit so it's not quite so in your face. Okay, let me wide angle out looking really good. So I've decided before we shade underneath everything, I want to put a ribbon coming around where you mark the pages. So we're going to do that. And I also want to darken right here. I can tell that it is not quite dark enough, so I'm going to take a little soft float of black and put that right there. That definitely needs to be darker. And a little bit on this side. Okay, that was just a little bit of black. I think I will also put, it's very sheer black, so I've really worked it in with paint along the bottom edge down here. I mean, I've worked it in with water, not paint. You're probably thinking that makes absolutely no sense. And you're right, it didn't. Okay. This is the time when you can look at it and see how your values stack up. You know, if you need to add a little bit darker here, a little bit lighter there. I feel like I need a little bit darker over here with that blue. That's that midnight blue. Go right down here. This is definitely the dark edge of this cup. Right here on the handle could be darker. Okay, that's looking better. Should be a really dark little area right there. And this should be pretty dark right here. So I'm going to mix a tiny little bit of black in there, because this should be pretty dark. Okay. Yep, so this is the time to kind of tweak everything. I've been thinking about putting some words on the top of this, so if I do, that will definitely be an optional thing. This needs to be just a little bit steamier. Coming off of there. Or not, depends on you. I mean, if you don't like it that dark, I feel like it's a little bit dark now. Okay. Alright, so let's do our ribbon. I've decided I want the ribbon to be burgundy color. So I'm gonna put some gold trim on it. So I'm gonna take our deep burgundy here. I'm gonna add a tiny bit of black to it so I can make it a little bit of a richer burgundy. So just add a small amount of black. I'll have to do this, paint this on a couple times because this burgundy is kind of transparent. So I'm gonna have it coming from around here. Falling along this edge of the book somewhere in there like that. That's not where I drew it, but that's how I painted it, so we're gonna go with that. Okay, and that has got to get dry before we can do anything else to it. I'm going to be lightening it up and everything. So while it is drying, let's grab some black And we'll go ahead and start shading. Ooh, or a lot of black. Oh my gosh, that's enough black for like 20 paintings. That's a lot of black. So we're just going to make a side float of black. And we want to create some dark areas and some shadow underneath stuff. So it's going to have quite a bit of shadow right there, and then as it comes out here, it's going to get thinner and thinner to there. And we'll have to do that a couple of times, I'm sure, because that is not showing up on this dark background. And then we'll be shadowed under here. Underneath the book here. I really don't want that to be on the pencil. Next to the pencil, but not on the pencil. So I'll put a little bit of a shadow here. I need some underneath the pencil. And I'm using a half-inch angle brush so that I can cover a bigger area, wider for a shadow, and it will carry my paint farther as well. So right here we'll have it really narrow. So I'm going to just go up on the toe of the brush and come right along that. And then we'll have just a little bit underneath the candle, right there. And then the cup will have some shadow here. And it will kind of come out from the cup a little bit. And then the book will have shadow on this edge that will be a little bit wider, and it will come out past actually the corner of the book. Have a little bit of shadow underneath the handle there. This is going to have to be repeated several times, I think, because our background is dark. So you might want to, this is going to be all black back in here. And we're going to have some black here. And right here. Okay, and you can just get a small, round brush to do that there if you want. And then we'll put some black along here. Just walk it down just a little bit. And so now you can see where everything's starting to dry, how the black is there, but it's barely seeable. So I'm going to repeat my black. Some water on my palette so I can have a little bit of water to move this paint here. Right along that edge. I'll go here and along this edge. Underneath the pencil again. Make sure you keep your edge of your pencil straight so you're not making it look weird. Although it could be a chewed up pencil, I don't know. Okay. Let's go over here around our cup. going to come out a little bit from the cup, down the edge of the book, and past the edge of the book. A little bit underneath the handle, and then again back in these darker areas. And here's where you can go to a smaller round brush if you prefer. And back here. Try and cover up my graphite lines here so I can not have to worry about trying to erase them. So that's got us a little bit more shadow underneath everything. I think I might drag a little bit of burnt umber and white across here, so it's burnt umber and warm white. Maybe a tiny bit of black. It's making this kind of gray-brown color. And just kind of give the surface a little dry brushing stuff going on. A bit of water. Okay, that gives us a little bit more variance of color on our tabletop. I like that much better. Okay. Alright, so now we can see a little bit more of that shadow around our book. And our pencil is done, and this is where you can be, well no, we can't be, we still have our ribbon to do. So let's do our ribbon. Let's finish our ribbon out. Okay, go back into that red, that burgundy color. And I'm going to go straight burgundy this time. And come around that. And then I'm going to take my a round brush and put some antique gold along each edge of that ribbon. Give it some gold binding on it. Really thin right here. It's coming from around back. And actually, right down here where I put it on both sides, I'm going to take it off of the inside there because we're going to make that look like it's a little flipped there, I think. So we won't see the gold on that side. Okay, so now we've got the gold and the yellow just on that ribbon. Let's add some highlight on the ribbon. So I'm going to take the burgundy with a little bit of warm white and add just a tiny bit of antique gold, and we're going to streak this down. Take my damp brush because I want to smooth that a little bit. Actually, I'm going to take that off because I think I want to make this satin ribbon. So satin ribbon is done differently. So I'll just take that off. Let me go ahead and make the gold, the antique gold stripe down the side. And I'm going to add a little white to the mix this time so we can get it to show up a little bit better. So it's antique gold and warm white. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm going to shade around the ribbon on the book with some burnt umber. I'm going to start with burnt umber. Too much water in my brush, so let me try that again. So we're going to have a little bit of a shadow here, and it's going to come along here. It'll be a tighter shadow right there. We can have just a hint of a shadow right there. I'm going to erase this graphite line I drew in here earlier. I'm going to darken that with just a tiny little bit of black. Maybe just a tiny bit more black. Okay, I want to do the gold again because it's not quite there for me yet. So the gold and the warm white. Okay. Okay, I want to create highlight on the ribbon itself to make it look a little bit more like satin ribbon. So I'm going to take my burgundy. Maybe I think I need to get some fresh out. And a little bit of white, warm white. I'm going to need to get some fresh of that out too. Alright, I'm going to go across my ribbon with this and create a little shine highlight there. And I'm going to put one down here. Get off my yellow. Okay, you can't see it too well, but it's on there. I really want that a little tiny bit darker underneath there. So I'm going to take a little tiny bit of black and really darken that. And right here I think as well, because it's where the darkest shadow will be from that ribbon. Okay, let's try that highlight again. I'm going to use, let me get some fresh warm white out wherever it is. There it is. Okay, I'm just going to use warm white this time. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to take some antique gold. I want to darken up just a little bit on this gold. I got it just a tiny bit too light that time. I want it to look gold, not white. So I'm going to take this warm white and work it into my toe of my brush. And I'm going to go all the way across the gold and the red. Right there. And right there. And then I put a highlight here, here, and that's the warm white. I'm going to take a tiny little bit of black and go right along the edge of the ribbon here. Go along back here. Darken that just a little bit. And then for a little shine on that ribbon and some other places, we'll take some warm white and just create a little bit of shine on there. And I want a little bit here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Take my antique gold down a little bit. Okay, that gives us a nice pretty gold ribbon on there. I'm going to repeat the highlight of just warm white on there. Which is here, and here, and here, and here. So that's going to give that the shine that it needs. Let's wide angle out. Okay, we've got some good shadow stuff going on. Again, when you're painting in your brown down here, you can certainly paint it in, you know, a much lighter color. I really feel like it still needs to be lighter, but I don't want to get it incredibly light because I think it will take away. So I'm just going to kind of drag, dry brush a little bit. And see if I can create that just a little bit brighter. Let's create more highs and lows in this. So yeah, all this will work out before you paint in. Of course, if you're painting along with me, you'll already have that done, but you know, just a little bit of lightening, and I think a final little shading of black on my corners, because my edges, I just feel like it needs it. Kind of settle it all down in here. And I still got a little bit of my graphite line there I don't want to see. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Now, this is the point where you can be completely done with this project. Or you can add some kind of inspiring words to it. I think I'm going to leave it right here. I might let it set for a couple days and see if I want to add any more anything to it. This is a pretty open space right here, but I don't mind it. If it's something that's distracting from you, you could put a plant or something back there. But I like the whole way that this looks. So I am going to call this one done. I've titled it Quiet Time. Thank you all so much for painting with me. I hope that you have enjoyed this. Every step of the way was such a fun painting for me to do. And see, now that everything is done, our book doesn't even look blue anymore. It looks gray. So I love that. And just thank you so much. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up if you have, and like, share, and comment on my videos. I appreciate you all so much for painting with me, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.